Here are 9 mistakes the Amish never make when growing tomatoes. Planting too early or too late. One of the most avoidable yet common mistakes gardeners make with tomatoes is planting too early or too late. The Amish, with generations of practical experience, never get this wrong. Tomatoes thrive on warmth and suffer greatly from cold. Planting too early can expose tender seedlings to unpredictable cold snaps, stunting growth or even killing young plants outright. Even nighttime temperatures below 50 degrees Fahrenheit can slow growth and reduce fruit yield. On the flip side, planting too late shortens the growing window, forcing plants to race against the first fall frost, often resulting in fewer and smaller tomatoes. The Amish have long relied on observation and patience rather than a fixed calendar. They follow a simple, time-tested process that any home gardener can use. First, check soil temperature. Tomatoes require soil to be at least 60 degrees Fahrenheit before transplanting. A basic soil thermometer works, or follow the Amish tradition. Press your hand into the soil early in the morning. If it feels cold, wait. Second, monitor nighttime air temperatures. Do not plant until lows reliably stay above 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Rushing the process rarely leads to good results. Third, pay attention to nature. Traditional Amish indicators include waiting until oak leaves are the size of a squirrel's ear or dogwood trees are in full bloom, both signs of stable spring warmth. These clues have been relied upon for generations, and they are remarkably accurate. Fourth, start tomato seeds indoors 6 to 8 weeks before the last expected frost date. Amish growers often use simple setups such as sunny windowsills or homemade cold frames. Fifth, harden off seedlings before transplanting. Begin by placing them outdoors in partial shade for 2 hours on the first day. Gradually increase exposure to sunlight and outdoor breezes each day over the course of 7 to 10 days. This toughens the plants and prepares them for the garden. Sixth, avoid transplanting on windy, rainy, or excessively hot days, which can damage tender plants. The Amish understand that patience leads to healthier, more productive plants. They never hesitate to delay planting by a week if conditions are questionable. They also keep simple row covers, cloches, or cold frames ready to protect young plants in case of unexpected cold spells after planting. Here's a final practical technique they often use: staggering plantings over 2 to 3 weeks. If an early planting fails due to weather, later plantings ensure a strong and consistent tomato harvest all summer long. Using poor quality seedlings. Many gardeners unknowingly set themselves up for disappointment by starting with weak or poor quality seedlings. The Amish never make this mistake. They know firsthand that strong, healthy plants are the foundation of a successful tomato harvest. Poor seedlings, those with spindly, thin stems, pale or yellowing leaves, root-bound systems, or signs of pests and disease, simply don't thrive. Even with perfect soil and careful watering, an inferior seedling will lag behind healthy neighbors, produce less fruit, and often fall prey to pests and fungal problems. The Amish avoid these pitfalls by being meticulous from the very start. The journey to high-quality seedlings begins indoors. About 6 to 8 weeks before planting outdoors, Amish growers sow seeds into clean, sterilized seed-starting mix. They choose well-draining containers and plant only viable seeds. Light is the next critical factor. While the Amish rely on sunny windows or greenhouse setups, home gardeners can use grow lights positioned just 2 to 3 inches above seedlings to prevent them from becoming stretched and weak. A bright, steady light source ensures compact, vigorous growth. Thinning is another Amish secret. Once seedlings sprout their first true leaves, weaker plants are culled so the strongest can flourish without competition. Watering is done carefully. The soil is kept moist but never soggy to avoid root rot. Good airflow is encouraged to prevent damping off disease, a common seedling killer. Temperature control is also key. Seedlings thrive at 65 to 75 degrees Fahrenheit. Sudden temperature swings or drafts are avoided. The Amish monitor these conditions closely, nurturing seedlings in an environment as stable as possible. Before transplanting, hardening off is essential, starting with 2 hours outside in light shade and gradually increasing time and exposure over 7 to 10 days helps seedlings adjust and reduces transplant shock. The Amish prefer saving their own seeds or exchanging with neighbors they trust. avoiding store-bought plants of unknown origin. If you do purchase seedlings, inspect them closely. Look for vibrant green leaves, firm stems, and healthy roots that aren't tangled or circling inside the pot. Here's a final practical tip to supercharge your seedlings at transplanting. Plant them deep, burying the stem up to the first set of leaves. Tomato stems grow new roots when buried, creating a sturdier plant with a larger root system for better water and nutrient uptake. Shallow planting. If there's one tomato growing mistake the Amish consistently avoid, it's shallow planting. New gardeners often assume tomatoes should be planted just as deeply as they came in their seed tray or store-bought pot. That's a critical error. Tomato plants are unique in that they grow roots along any portion of their stem that's underground. Shallow planting leads to weak, wobbly plants with limited root systems, making them prone to drought stress, wind damage, and poor fruit production. The Amish, through generations of observation, know that deeper planting means stronger, more resilient plants. They start with healthy, sturdy seedlings that are at least 6 to 8 inches tall. When preparing the garden bed, they dig a hole deep enough to bury the stem up to the first set of true leaves. Some even plant tomatoes in a trench horizontally, gently bending the stem and covering part of it with soil. This method encourages extensive root development along the buried stem, which results in a more robust root system. The top few inches of the stem and leaves remain above ground and continue growing upward toward the sun. The process begins with choosing the right spot. Amish growers favor full sun locations with at least 8 hours of sunlight per day. They loosen the soil thoroughly to a depth of 12 inches or more to help the roots spread easily. Compost, or well-aged manure, is mixed into the soil to improve fertility and drainage. Next, seedlings are gently removed from their containers, taking care not to disturb the root ball. The lowest leaves are pinched off to expose the bare stem. The seedling is lowered into the hole or trench, so the remaining leaves are just above the surface. The hole is then backfilled with soil, firmed gently around the plant to remove air pockets, and watered thoroughly to settle the soil around the roots. Amish growers avoid adding fertilizer at this stage. Too much nitrogen too early encourages excessive leafy growth at the expense of fruit. Instead, they focus on strong root development. As the plant matures, mulch is applied around the base to retain moisture and regulate soil temperature. Here's a practical tip the Amish often use for windy locations. Stake or cage the tomato plant at the time of planting, not later. Early support prevents damaging root disturbances that occur when supports are added after the plant is large and heavy. Inconsistent watering. Inconsistent watering is one of the most damaging mistakes tomato growers make, and it's something Amish farmers are careful to avoid. Tomato plants demand steady moisture levels to thrive. If a plant is left dry for too long, then suddenly soaked, the fruit may split or develop a blossom end rot. The stress also weakens the plant's overall vigor, leading to fewer tomatoes and more vulnerability to pests and disease. Amish growers have passed down simple, common-sense watering habits for generations, which modern gardeners can easily adopt for better results. Amish tomato growers know the goal is deep, even moisture. They avoid daily light watering that encourages shallow roots. Instead, they water thoroughly and less frequently. Their rule of thumb is to check the soil by gently pressing a finger 2 inches into it. If the soil feels dry at that depth, it's time to water. If it's moist, they hold off. Typically, tomatoes only need watering once or twice a week, depending on the heat and rainfall. Watering early in the day is another habit Amish farmers follow. Morning watering gives plants the hydration they need to withstand midday heat and allows leaves to dry before evening, preventing fungal infections. Watering late in the day, by contrast, risks keeping leaves damp overnight, a perfect recipe for diseases like blight and mildew. When watering, Amish gardeners direct the water at the base of the plant, not over the leaves. Overhead, watering wastes water and increases disease risk by splashing soil onto the lower leaves. A soaker hose or watering can with a narrow spout works best to deliver moisture directly to the roots. Once the soil warms, the Amish add mulch around the base of the plants. This can be straw, grass clippings, or shredded leaves. Mulch holds moisture in the soil, reduces evaporation, suppresses weeds, and stabilizes soil temperatures, creating a more forgiving environment for the plants. Another clever strategy the Amish sometimes use is to partially bury clay pots filled with water next to tomato plants. As the water slowly seeps out, it delivers steady moisture right at the root zone where it's needed most. This low-tech, old-world trick is particularly helpful during prolonged dry spells and keeps tomatoes healthy without constant attention. Overhead watering. Overhead watering is a mistake many beginner gardeners make, but the Amish know better. The sight of a sprinkler showering a vegetable garden may look picturesque, yet for tomatoes, it causes more harm than good. When tomato leaves are drenched repeatedly, it increases the chances of fungal diseases such as early blight, late blight, and leaf spot. Wet leaves also attract pests and can cause fruit cracking when water sits inside the plant's crevices. The Amish, guided by years of hands-on experience, use more efficient watering techniques to avoid these problems and keep plants healthy. One reason overhead watering fails is simple physics. Much of the water evaporates before reaching the plant roots. What does reach the roots often comes unevenly, encouraging shallow root growth that leaves the plant vulnerable to drought and wind damage. The Amish prefer delivering water straight to the soil, where the roots can absorb it directly and steadily. Their process starts with observation. They check soil moisture by pressing a finger 2 inches into the dirt. If the soil is dry at that depth, they water. Amish gardeners always water early in the morning, giving plants the moisture they need to endure the heat of the day. Early watering also allows any accidental splashes on the leaves to dry quickly, reducing disease risk. Amish farmers water slowly and deeply, letting moisture seep deep into the ground. This trains tomato roots to grow downward, making them stronger and more resilient. They typically use watering cans with long spouts, soaker hoses, or drip irrigation lines that deliver water precisely at the base of each plant. Not only does this prevent splashing, it also conserves water and ensures every drop counts. Mulching plays a vital supporting role. Once plants are established, the Amish lay down straw, grass clippings, or shredded leaves around the base of the tomatoes. The mulch keeps moisture in the soil, prevents weeds, and stops water from bouncing soil onto leaves, which can spread disease. Some gardeners mistakenly assume overhead watering on a hot day will cool the plants. It does not. It actually risks shocking the leaves and fruit. Instead, Amish growers know that providing consistent root zone watering is what truly keeps tomatoes vigorous. One practical strategy they often rely on: they sink unglazed clay pots next to the plants and fill them with water. The moisture slowly seeps into the soil right at the roots, offering a steady supply without ever wetting the foliage. Neglecting plant support. Tomatoes are naturally vigorous climbers, not ground crawlers. The Amish understand this instinctively and never neglect the simple but critical task of supporting their plants. Many home gardeners plant tomatoes without thinking about support, only to find their garden a tangled mess by midsummer. Heavy fruit pools stems to the ground, where they become vulnerable to pests, rot, and disease. Dense, sprawling plants also block airflow, creating the perfect conditions for fungal infections like blight. Amish growers learned long ago that supporting tomatoes from day one makes all the difference between a chaotic garden and a thriving one. The Amish have 2 primary approaches: staking and caging. For determinate tomatoes, which grow as compact bushes, sturdy stakes are the tool of choice. They drive wooden or metal stakes at least 12 inches deep into the ground, just a few inches from the plant stem. As the tomato grows, soft cloth ties or garden twine gently secure the stem to the stake at intervals of 8 to 10 inches. The key is tying loosely enough to allow stem expansion, but firmly enough to prevent flopping. For indeterminate varieties, the ones that grow and produce fruit all summer, Amish growers prefer heavy-duty cages. They often construct their own using strong wire fencing to ensure durability. These tall cages guide the plant upward while holding branches and fruit securely off the ground. The open design allows air to flow freely through the plant, reducing disease risk and making harvesting easier. Once plants are growing, Amish gardeners inspect them regularly. They adjust ties as needed and prune off suckers, those tiny shoots that emerge between a leaf and the main stem. Removing suckers helps the plant channel energy into producing larger, higher quality tomatoes rather than unnecessary foliage. Timing is also key. Amish farmers always install supports at the time of transplanting, never after plants have started sprawling. Pushing a stake or cage into the soil around an established plant risks damaging its delicate roots. Early installation avoids this problem entirely. One practical habit Amish gardeners have perfected is marking the variety of tomato directly onto the stake or cage. It might seem like a small step, but it prevents confusion between early, mid-season, and late varieties. Labeling also helps keep track of which plants respond best to different care techniques over the years, making future growing seasons even more successful. Overcrowding plants. One of the simplest mistakes home gardeners make, but the Amish wisely avoid, is planting tomatoes too close together. The excitement of getting more plants in a small space often leads to crowded conditions where plants struggle for light, air, and nutrients. The result: weak plants, fewer tomatoes, and a surge in disease problems such as early blight, powdery mildew, and bacterial spot. Amish farmers understand that giving tomato plants plenty of room from the beginning creates healthier, more productive plants and a much easier garden to manage. Proper spacing starts at planting. Amish growers typically space determinate, bush-wide tomato varieties about 18 to 24 inches apart and indeterminate, vining varieties at least 30 to 36 inches apart. Row spacing of 3 to 4 feet gives enough room to move freely for staking, weeding, and harvesting. Good spacing encourages better airflow, reduces leaf wetness, and lowers disease risk. Preparation happens long before planting. The Amish thoroughly amend the soil with compost and natural fertilizers to improve drainage and soil structure. They measure out planting spots carefully using simple tools like a length of knotted twine or a measuring stick to ensure uniform distances. Guesswork is never part of their method. Once the tomatoes are growing, the Amish maintain spacing discipline by pruning. They remove suckers, the small shoots that form between the main stem and branch, which helps plants focus energy on fruit production rather than excessive foliage. Pruning also improves airflow and allows more sunlight to reach ripening fruit, resulting in bigger, better-tasting tomatoes. Crowded plants invite pests. Hornworms, aphids, and whiteflies love the dense cover of unpruned, packed plants. Amish gardeners reduce this threat by ensuring that plants don't touch and that there are open spaces between them, making pest inspection and removal much easier. Weed control is also simpler. When tomato plants have room, weeds can't sneak in unnoticed, and the open paths allow for easier hoeing or hand pulling. Many gardeners don't realize crowded plants also produce fewer, smaller, and less flavorful tomatoes. The Amish avoid this outcome by giving their plants every advantage. One simple habit the Amish include in their routine is to rotate the tomato crop location every season, planting tomatoes where beans or leafy greens grew the previous year. This natural crop rotation helps prevent the buildup of soil-borne diseases and pests, supporting healthier plants season after season, ignoring crop rotation. Many home gardeners plant tomatoes in the same spot year after year without considering the consequences. The Amish, guided by generations of farming wisdom, and never ignore crop rotation. Growing tomatoes in the same soil season after season leads to soil exhaustion, nutrient imbalances, and the buildup of soil-borne diseases such as verticillium wilt, fusarium wilt, and bacterial spot. Pests like nematodes and hornworms also linger in the soil, waiting for their favorite crop to return. Amish growers understand that rotating crops not only protects their tomatoes, but also helps maintain a healthy, balanced garden ecosystem. The principle of crop rotation is simple but powerful. It involves moving tomato plants to a different area of the garden each season so that no related crops, such as peppers, eggplants, or potatoes, which share similar diseases, occupy the same space in consecutive years. Amish farmers typically follow a 3 to 4 year rotation cycle. Tomatoes are grown in one area one season, then followed by unrelated crops like beans, corn, or leafy greens in subsequent years. Planting rotation begins before planting. The Amish often sketch simple garden maps or use memory and observation to track what is grown where. This prevents accidental repetition and ensures a healthy rotation schedule. It also encourages variety and balance in the garden, leading to improved soil fertility and structure. Soil health is further enhanced because different plants have different nutrient needs. Tomatoes are heavy feeders that draw large amounts of nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus from the soil. Crops like beans and peas, in contrast, fix nitrogen back into the soil, enriching it naturally for the next planting cycle. By alternating crops, Amish growers reduce reliance on synthetic fertilizers and allow nature to do much of the soil restoration work. Rotating also minimizes pests. Pests that overwinter in the soil looking for tomatoes won't find their target if beans or corn are planted instead. Amish growers pair rotation with companion planting, growing pest-repelling plants like marigolds or basil near tomatoes to further discourage unwanted visitors. Skipping rotation, by contrast, almost guarantees trouble. Even well-cared-for plants can succumb to lingering disease spores or pest eggs left from previous seasons. An Amish-inspired practice that any home gardener can adopt is to plant cover crops like clover or rye during the off-season. These green manures improve soil structure, prevent erosion, and add organic matter, leaving the soil richer and healthier for next year's tomato crop. Harvesting too early. The excitement of seeing the first blushing tomatoes often leads gardeners to pick them too soon. The Amish, however, have perfected the art of patience. They understand that harvesting tomatoes prematurely can compromise both flavor and nutrition. Tomatoes picked too early may look colorful on the outside, but lack the deep, rich taste that comes from fully vine-ripened fruit. Additionally, early harvesting limits the fruit's natural sugar development and texture, resulting in mealy or bland tomatoes. The Amish know that leaving tomatoes on the plant until fully ripe rewards them with superior flavor and a more satisfying harvest. Judging the right time to harvest starts with observation. Amish growers examine the fruit daily once it begins to change color. For most tomato varieties, full ripeness is indicated when the entire fruit has turned a deep, uniform color with no green areas near the stem. They also check for a slight give when gently squeezed. A ripe tomato should be firm but yield slightly under pressure. The Amish avoid relying solely on size as an indicator, since tomatoes mature at different rates depending on variety and weather conditions. They recognize that some heirloom types remain smaller even when fully mature. Experience teaches them to know what a ripe tomato should feel, smell, and look like for each specific variety. They also harvest at the right time of day. Amish farmers prefer to pick in the morning when temperatures are cooler and fruit is firmest. Hot afternoon sun can soften the fruit and make it more prone to bruising during handling. Tomatoes are gently twisted or snipped from the vine to avoid damaging the plant. Overhandling or tugging is never part of the Amish routine. They use clean hands or small pruners and place tomatoes in shallow baskets to prevent crushing. Amish growers also avoid washing tomatoes immediately after picking, since moisture can speed up spoilage. Instead, they wipe off any dirt and store them at room temperature away from direct sunlight. Although vine-ripened tomatoes offer the best taste, Amish gardeners understand that weather and pests don't always cooperate. If heavy rains or cold nights threaten, they'll harvest tomatoes at the mature green or breaker stage, when color just begins to show, and ripen them indoors on a windowsill or into paper bags. To further improve flavor, Amish farmers often leave the last set of fruit on the plant a few extra days. This small extra weight allows sugars to fully develop, yielding tomatoes with a richer, sweeter taste that makes the entire growing season worthwhile. For more contents like this, click here to subscribe.